He was hired to sing at the Vampire King's ceremony, but the groom was her ex-fiancé. The invitation arrived on black parchment, sealed with crimson wax bearing the mark of the vampire court. Celeste held it between trembling fingers, her voice coach reading over her shoulder. The Vampire King's bonding ceremony, Maestro Laurent breathed. Celeste, do you understand what this means? Vampires only bond once every century. This is the highest honor a human singer could receive. Celeste nodded, though her stomach churned with anxiety. 3 months ago, she'd submitted her audition tape to the vampire court on a whim, never expecting a response. Now, she was being summoned to the Obsidian Palace to perform the ceremonial songs at King Theron Blackwood's eternal bonding. The payment alone would save her family's struggling music conservatory. She couldn't refuse. 2 weeks later, Celeste arrived at the palace as twilight painted the sky in shades of purple and gold. The structure loomed before her, a Gothic masterpiece of black stone and silver spires that seemed to pierce the heavens themselves. Vampire guards in midnight armor escorted her through gates that whispered shut behind her with an ominous finality. Miss Ashbourne, a pale woman in elegant robes, approached. "I am Vivienne, the King's Chamberlain. Welcome to the Obsidian Palace. The ceremony is in 3 days. Until then, you'll rehearse daily and learn our traditions." Celeste was led through corridors lined with portraits of previous vampire monarchs, their eyes seeming to follow her progress. The palace hummed with an ancient energy that made her mortal blood sing in her veins. Her quarters were surprisingly warm, a suite decorated in deep burgundies and golds, with a view of the palace's famous night gardens. On her bed lay several scrolls containing the ceremonial songs she'd need to master. That first night she barely slept. The songs were unlike anything she'd encountered, written in old vampiric, with melodies that seemed to resonate with something primal and eternal. When she practiced them softly, the very air around her shimmered. The next morning, or rather evening, as the vampire court operated on nocturnal schedules, Celeste was summoned for her first rehearsal in the grand ceremonial hall. The space took her breath away. Vaulted ceilings stretched impossibly high, painted with celestial maps of constellations long forgotten by humans. Massive pillars of obsidian supported archways carved with scenes of vampire history. At the center stood a raised dais where the bonding would take place. "You'll stand here," Vivienne indicated a platform to the left of the dais. "The king and his bride will enter from opposite sides at moonrise. Your first song calls them together, the second binds their essence, the third seals their bond for eternity." Celeste practiced her positioning, her voice echoing through the empty hall with haunting beauty. She was so focused on the acoustics that she didn't notice she had an audience until Vivienne suddenly bowed deeply. "Your Majesty." Celeste spun around and froze. Standing in the shadows at the hall's entrance was a figure of terrifying magnificence. King Theron Blackwood stepped into the candlelight, and Celeste understood immediately why vampires inspired both worship and fear. He stood well over 6 feet tall, with a warrior's build evident even beneath his formal black attire. His face could have been carved from marble, sharp cheekbones, a strong jaw, and lips that suggested both cruelty and sensuality. But it was his eyes that captured her, ancient silver eyes that held centuries of knowledge, power, and something that looked almost like loneliness. His presence filled the enormous hall, making the air feel charged with electricity. Maestro Laurent spoke truthfully, Theron said, his voice like dark velvet. "Your voice is extraordinary, Miss Ashbourne." Celeste managed a shaky curtsy. "Thank you, Your Majesty, I'm honored to serve." Those silver eyes studied her with an intensity that made her feel transparent. The bonding songs are not merely performances. They carry ancient magic that will link my essence with my bride's for eternity. Do you understand the weight of this responsibility? "I do, Your Majesty, I won't fail you." Something flickered across his face, too quick to identify. "See that you don't. Eternity is a very long time to live with a poorly executed bond." He turned to leave, then paused. "Vivienne, ensure Miss Ashbourne has everything she needs, and Celeste." He looked back at her, and for a moment his expression was almost gentle. "Welcome to the Obsidian Palace. I hope your stay here proves memorable." After he left, Celeste released a breath she hadn't known she was holding. "The king seems pleased," Vivienne observed. That's good, he's been rather unsettled lately. Unsettled, he's about to bond for eternity. Shouldn't he be happy? Vivienne's expression grew carefully neutral. Political alliances often take precedence over personal happiness, even for kings, perhaps especially for kings. Celeste wanted to ask more, but Vivienne quickly changed the subject, drilling her on proper ceremonial protocols. The next 2 days passed in intensive rehearsals. Celeste saw King Thuron only from a distance, a dark figure moving through the palace with deadly grace, always surrounded by advisors and courtiers. She noticed he never smiled. On the evening before the ceremony, Celeste decided to walk through the night gardens to calm her nerves. The gardens were spectacular, filled with flowers that only bloomed under moonlight, their petals luminescent in shades of silver and blue. She was admiring a particularly beautiful moon orchid when she heard voices from beyond a hedge of midnight roses. "Thuron, you can't go through with this," a male voice, urgent and concerned. "I have no choice, Marcus." That was definitely the king's voice, but tired in a way she hadn't heard before. "The treaty with the Northern Covens depends on this bond. Without it, we face war." "There must be another way. You don't love Seraphina, you barely know her." "Love is a luxury I cannot afford. I am king. My personal desires are irrelevant." Celeste knew she should leave, but something in Thuron's voice, a profound sadness, rooted her to the spot. "You're condemning yourself to an eternity of emptiness," Marcus said softly. "I've been empty for centuries," Thuron replied. "What's a few more?" Footsteps approached her hiding spot, and Celeste quickly hurried away, her heart aching for a king who had everything except freedom. She returned to her quarters troubled but pushed her concerns aside. She had a job to do. Whatever King Thuron's personal feelings, the ceremony would proceed, and she needed to be perfect. The day of the ceremony arrived. Celeste was dressed in a gown of midnight blue that flowed like water, her dark hair woven with silver threads that caught the candlelight. Vivienne led her to the grand ceremonial hall, now transformed into something from a dream. Thousands of candles floated in the air, casting dancing shadows across the obsidian pillars. The vampire nobility filled the space, hundreds of immortal beings in their finest regalia, their collective power making the air shimmer. At the center, the ceremonial dais had been prepared, covered in white rose petals that glowed like captured moonlight. Celeste took her position on the platform, her hands folded to hide their trembling. The orchestra of vampire musicians settled into place, their instruments ancient and strange. As moonrise approached, silence fell over the assembly. Then, from the eastern entrance, King Thuron appeared. He wore ceremonial armor of black and silver that made him look like a god of war. A crown of dark metal rested on his head, set with stones that seemed to hold captured starlight. He moved with predatory grace down the aisle, his expression completely unreadable. He took his place on the dais, standing alone, waiting. The orchestra began the processional music, haunting and beautiful. Celeste prepared herself to see the bride for the first time, curious about the woman who would become vampire queen. The western doors opened. A figure appeared, dressed in white ceremonial robes that trailed behind her like snow. Her face was covered by a traditional bonding veil, but something about her height, her posture, the way she moved was achingly familiar. Celeste's breath caught in her throat. No, it couldn't be. The bride processed down the aisle with measured steps, accompanied by her attendants. As she drew closer to the dais, one of the attendants adjusted her veil, and for just a moment, Celeste saw her face clearly in the candlelight. The world tilted. It was Meredith. Meredith Ashford, who had been engaged to Celeste's fiancé 2 years ago. Meredith, who had smiled at Celeste's engagement party while secretly meeting with David in hidden corners. Meredith, who had stolen the man Celeste loved and then disappeared from society so completely that Celeste had assumed she'd left the country. But she hadn't left. She'd been claimed by the vampire court, groomed to become vampire queen. And she was about to bond eternally with King Thuron. Celeste felt ice flood her veins. The irony was devastating. She'd been hired to sing at her ex-fiancé's lover's wedding. But this was so much worse, so much more complicated. Because as Meredith took her place on the dais, as Theron's silver eyes met those of his bride-to-be, Celeste saw something that made her heart fracture. She saw the same emptiness in Meredith's eyes that she'd heard in Theron's voice in the garden. Neither of them wanted this. Vivienne gave Celeste the signal. It was time for the first song, the calling. Celeste opened her mouth, praying her voice wouldn't betray her shock, but as the first notes emerged, something unexpected happened. The song took over. Her voice filled the hall with such pure, haunting beauty that even the ancient vampires fell silent in wonder. The melody was older than empires, speaking of love that transcended time, of bonds that could survive eternity, of two souls finding completion in each other. As she sang, she watched Theron's face. For the first time since she'd arrived, she saw real emotion there, not happiness but a profound grief that matched the ache in her own chest. This was wrong, all of it was wrong. But the ceremony continued, and Celeste sang the ancient words that would bind two people who didn't love each other for all of eternity. The first song ended and ceremonial silence fell over the hall. Celeste prepared for the second song, the binding, but then King Theron raised his hand. The gesture stopped everything. Confused murmurs rippled through the assembled vampires. "Your Majesty," the High Priest stepped forward, "is something wrong?" Theron stood motionless, his silver eyes fixed not on his bride but on Celeste. "I cannot do this." Shock waves rolled through the assembly. Meredith's veiled head snapped toward the king. "Your Majesty," the High Priest's voice was controlled, "the ceremony has begun. To stop now would..." "Would what?" Theron's voice held danger. "I am king. I have given everything to our people. I will not give eternity itself to a bond built on political convenience." Chaos erupted. Vampire nobles rose, voices raised in protest. The Northern Coven's delegation looked murderous. Through it all, Celeste stood frozen, unable to look away. Meredith slowly lifted her veil, revealing her beautiful vampire face, but her expression held relief, not anger. "Thank the ancients," she whispered. "I thought I was going to have to be the one to object." Theron's head turned sharply. You didn't want this either." "Want it? I've been dreading this for 6 months. But the Northern Coven said if I didn't go through with it, they'd kill my family. My human family." Theron's expression transformed into terrifying rage. "Marcus, arrest the Northern delegation, charge them with coercion of a royal bond." Guards moved swiftly as Northern vampires protested. Theron's power filled the room, pressing down on everyone. "You dare threaten human families to force a bond?" His ancient rage was barely contained. "Take them to the dungeons." As they were dragged away, Theron turned to Meredith, his expression softening. "You should have told me. I would never have allowed threats against your family." Meredith's eyes filled with bloody tears. "I was afraid. I'm newly turned powerless. You're the vampire king." "This ceremony is concluded," Theron announced to the assembly. "The bond will not proceed. Lady Meredith is free with my protection. Anyone who threatens her or her family will answer to me personally." He paused, finding Celeste's eyes once more. "Miss Ashbourne, you will be compensated fully. Your discretion would be appreciated." Then he walked from the hall, leaving chaos behind. That evening, Celeste walked through the night gardens, her mind reeling. She'd been asked to stay for the inquiry into the Northern Coven's conspiracy. "They're beautiful, aren't they?" She spun to find Theron standing behind her, no longer in ceremonial armor. He wore simple dark clothing that made him look less like a king and more like a man. A very tired, very lonely man. "Your Majesty." "Please, just Theron in this garden." He moved beside her, looking at the glowing moon orchids. "I come here when I need to remember that beauty can exist without purpose or obligation." Without his crown and armor, she could see the man beneath, someone who'd lived so long the weight showed in his eyes. "That was brave," she said softly. "What you did." "Brave or foolish, I may have just started a war." "Does that matter more than your freedom?" Theron looked at her fully, intensity burning in his silver eyes. "No one has asked me that in 300 years. "Does it?" "I thought so, but standing on that dais, about to bind myself eternally to someone I didn't love." I heard your voice singing about eternal devotion, and I realized I was about to make a mockery of everything those words meant. He reached out, fingers gentle as they touched a flower petal. Tell me, Celeste, in your human life, have you experienced the love the songs describe? Her heart clenched. I thought I had. I was engaged 2 years ago, to a man named David. Then I discovered he'd been seeing someone else. He left me 3 weeks before our wedding. Meredith, it wasn't a question. Her head snapped up. How? I've lived long enough to read people well. The way you looked at her when she entered, that was recognition and pain. He moved closer. The woman who stole your fiancé became my almost bride. Fate has a twisted sense of humor. I didn't know if I should say anything. I'm glad you didn't, he paused. Do you still love him? No, the love died that day. What haunted me was wondering if I was ever enough. You were always enough. His voice held absolute certainty. His blindness speaks only to him, not to any lack in you. Something in his tone made her brave. And you, in 300 years have you experienced that love? His expression became distant. Once, a human woman named Catherine, we had 10 years before age claimed her. She asked me to turn her, but I refused. I'd seen too many forced turnings end in madness. So I held her as she aged, and when she died, part of me died too. I'm so sorry. It was 200 years ago. But time doesn't heal all wounds. I swore I'd never love again. Keep my heart frozen safe. He looked at her, ancient pain in his eyes. Until tonight, until I heard you sing and realized I was about to lock myself into an eternity of exactly that, frozen and hollow. His fingers barely brushed her cheek. You have power in your voice, it carries truth. When you sang about eternal love, I felt something I haven't felt in 2 centuries. Hope, and it terrified me. Celeste's heart pounded. Your heart races, he murmured. I frighten you. No, this frightens me, whatever this is. Yes, this, understanding lit his eyes. They stood in moonlight, 2 wounded souls circling something neither could name but both felt. I should go, Celeste said. This isn't, we can't. No, we can't, you're human, I'm vampire king. This is impossible. Completely impossible. Neither moved. Then Theron stepped back, distance between them again. Lady Meredith has requested to speak with you. She wishes to apologize for the past. She doesn't need to. Perhaps not for you, but she needs to for herself. He bowed slightly. Good night, Celeste. Thank you for this conversation. It was necessary. He vanished into shadows, leaving her alone with a confused heart. Meredith waited in the east wing. She looked smaller, younger than the confident woman who'd stolen David. Thank you for coming, Meredith said. I need to apologize for what I did with David. Celeste had imagined this moment countless times, but now she found she didn't need rehearsed speeches. Why did you do it? Because I was selfish and jealous. You had this gift, this voice, this purpose. I had nothing but a pretty face. Taking David was about proving I could have something you wanted. Did he make you happy? For 3 months, then he moved on to someone else. Turns out you weren't the problem, he was. Meredith's expression turned sad. I lost everything. That's when the Northern Covens found me. They offered eternal life, but it was a trap. They turned me, then said I'd bond with the king. When I hesitated, they threatened my family. Celeste felt anger dissolving into understanding. Theron won't let them hurt your family. He won't. He gave up everything to save me from that bond. That's not the action of the monster I'd heard about. No, it's not. Meredith studied her. He watches you, you know, the way he looks at you. I've never seen anything like it. She leaned forward. I have no right to give advice, but I've learned something. Eternity is very long when filled with regrets about chances not taken. Before Celeste could respond, Vivienne appeared. Miss Ashbourne, the king requests your presence, immediately. Theron's study was cozy, lined with books, comfortable furniture, a fireplace casting dancing shadows. He stood by the fire, tension in every line of his body. You sent for me. He turned. I need complete honesty. When you sang tonight, did you feel anything unusual? She thought back. The song took over, like something ancient was singing through me. Theron's expression intensified. The ceremonial songs contain old magic. They identify true bonds, souls meant to be joined. When performed for destined mates, the magic activates. I don't understand. The magic didn't activate for Meredith and me, but there was power there, waiting. He moved closer. Old legends say the magic lies dormant until it recognizes a true bond. Her breath caught. What are you saying? I'm saying I've spent 300 years refusing to feel, building impenetrable walls. And then you arrived with your voice and wounded eyes and brave heart, and those walls started crumbling. He was very close now. When I stood on that dais, I wasn't thinking about Meredith. I was thinking about you. Theron. This is insane, impossible. You're human, I'm vampire. There are 1,000 reasons this can't work. His voice dropped. But I've lived long enough to know that finding someone who makes you feel alive doesn't happen often. I'm tired of duty without joy, of existence without life. What are you asking me? His cool fingers cupped her face. I'm asking if you feel this too, this impossible connection. She could lie, keep her heart safe. Or be brave. Yes, I feel it too. The kiss was gentle, a question. His lips cool against hers, but heat bloomed between them. Her hands found his shoulders, his arms wrapped around her waist. When they broke apart, both were breathless. This is complicated, she said. Extremely. People will disapprove. Undoubtedly. I might be making another terrible mistake. Theron smiled, a real smile that transformed his face. Perhaps, but maybe this mistake will be worth making. I don't know how this works. I'm mortal, you're eternal. I know, I swore I'd never fall for a human again, but I've learned something. Protecting yourself from loss also means protecting yourself from life. His expression grew serious. I've had 200 years of safety. I'd rather have whatever time we can steal together. I'm supposed to leave tomorrow. I know. But I could stay, for the inquiry, and maybe the ceremonial singer should learn more about the court, for professional development. His smile was radiant. Professional development, of course. He kissed her again, this time with less hesitation, more promise. When they finally parted, both knew everything had changed. The impossible had become inevitable. 3 months passed. Celeste became the court's master of ceremonies, filling the palace with music. But everyone knew her true role, the human who captured the vampire king's heart. The most obvious change was in Theron himself. Your Majesty seems almost happy, Marcus observed. It's unsettling. Theron didn't look up from his correspondence. I'll try to be more tyrannical if it makes you comfortable. The Northern Covens have agreed to our terms, reparations, apologies, and a new treaty against forced bondings. Marcus paused. They suggest the king should still bond, but this time choose his own mate, someone of his heart regardless of politics. Theron's expression was carefully neutral. How progressive. The court is talking about you and the human singer. I'm aware. Theron stood looking out at the gardens where Celeste walked among moon orchids. Just seeing her made something in his chest warm. I've spent 300 years doing what was expected, and I've been miserable. She makes me want to live again. Is that so wrong? Marcus's expression softened. No, but she's mortal. You'll watch her age, then lose her to time. I know, I think about it constantly, but the pain of losing her eventually is preferable to the emptiness of never having her at all. Have you discussed this with her? We've talked around it, but I've been a coward. Theron's voice was heavy, afraid that once we face reality she'll make the sensible choice and leave. Then stop being a coward, Marcus said gently. Celeste was in the music conservatory when Theron found her, working on a new composition. He stood watching her, this woman who'd become woven into his existence. Morning walks, evenings by the fire, late-night conversations, stolen kisses, the gradual, terrifying process of falling completely in love. She looked up, her face lighting with a smile that made his heart ache. You're brooding, what's wrong? He closed the door. We need to talk. About us, the future, things we've been avoiding. Her smile faded. That sounds ominous. Not ominous, necessary. He sat beside her. These past months have been the happiest I've known in 2 centuries. I've fallen in love with you deeply, completely. I love you too, you know that. I do, and that makes this harder. He took her hands. The court wants me to bond, and I want to bond for the first time since Catherine, but you're human. If we bond, I'll watch you age while I stay the same. When you die, I'll still be bonded, able to feel your absence for thousands of years. Understanding dawned. You're worried about me aging. Yes, I went through it once. It nearly destroyed me. This time would be worse, an eternal wound. Celeste was quiet. There's another option, you could turn me. Theron flinched. No. Why not? The transformation is traumatic. It changes people. They lose their essential spark, their humanity. I've seen it too many times. He cupped her face. I love you because of your humanity, your warmth, your mortality that makes every moment precious. I won't risk destroying that. So what are you saying? We should end this. I don't know, I just know you need to understand what you'd be choosing. Aging while I don't, eventually dying while I continue. If we bond, I'll carry that loss for eternity. Is that fair to ask? Celeste stood, pacing. Finally she turned. Life itself is uncertain. I could die tomorrow or 50 years from now. There are no guarantees. The question isn't whether I'll die, that's certain. The question is how I want to live. And how do you want to live? Alive, really alive, the way I feel with you. She knelt before him. Before this palace, I was sleepwalking, teaching, performing, protecting myself from heartbreak. You've made me want to risk again, want to feel again. Celeste. Yes, I'll age. Yes, that will be hard. Yes, I'll die and leave you. But the alternative, walking away to avoid eventual pain, means we lose all the years we could have together. She took his hands. I'd rather have 50 years of really living with you than 100 years of existing without you. Theron felt hope and fear tangled together. You make it sound simple. It is simple, not easy but simple. Do we love each other enough to make this worth it? Yes, God help me, yes. Then that's our answer. She kissed him. We have however much time we have, let's not waste it being afraid. He pulled her close, breathing her in, warm and alive and human. I love you, more than I thought I could love anything again. I love you too, enough to face whatever comes. 2 weeks later, King Theron announced he would bond with Celeste Ashbourne in a private ceremony. The vampire nobility reacted with predictable scandal, but Theron was king, and those who protested too loudly were reminded exactly how dangerous he could be. Support came from unexpected sources. Meredith spoke eloquently about choosing one's destiny. Marcus stood beside his king. Many younger vampires approved of prioritizing love over politics. The ceremony was held at midnight in the same hall where Theron had stopped his first bonding, but this time it was intimate, lit by hundreds of candles, attended only by close friends. Celeste wore midnight blue that captured starlight. No veil, she wanted Theron to see her clearly as she chose him. When she entered, his expression transformed with such raw love that even ancient vampires felt their hearts stir. She walked to him, hand extended. He took it, pulling her close. The high priest smiled. Let's skip the formalities, we know why we're here. Lady Celeste, would you sing your own bonding? She'd chosen to perform the ceremonial songs herself. As she sang, her voice filled the hall with haunting beauty. But this time, something different happened. The air began to shimmer. Ancient magic awakened. Visible threads of silver light wove between Celeste and Theron, connecting them. The old magic, the priest whispered. It recognizes them, a true bond. Celeste continued, tears streaming as she felt the magic working. It felt like coming home. When she reached the binding verse, Theron joined his voice with hers, deep and rich, carrying centuries. Their voices twined together in harmonies that resonated with power. Silver threads multiplied, weaving complex patterns. The magic showed what they knew, their souls recognized each other, fitting together perfectly. As they sang the ceiling, the threads pulled tight, then sank into their skin. Celeste gasped. She could feel Theron now, his presence in her mind and soul. And he felt her, the warmth of her humanity, the brightness of her spirit, the fierce love that matched his own. It is done, the priest declared emotionally. The bond is sealed. What the ancient magic has joined, let no force attempt to separate. Theron pulled Celeste into his arms, kissing her as witnesses erupted in celebration. "I can feel you," she whispered, "inside my heart." "I know," he murmured. "You're part of me now, for whatever time we have and whatever comes after." 20 years later. Celeste stood at the piano, her fingers still graceful though her hands now showed age, fine lines, silver strands in her hair. She was 45, visibly older. Theron looked exactly the same. It should have bothered her more, but through their bond she felt his love, unwavering, growing stronger, indifferent to physical changes. Meredith appeared at the door. "Can I ask you something? Do you regret not being turned?" "Sometimes I wonder, but becoming vampire would change who I am. The warmth, the passion, that's what he loves." "Does he seem unhappy?" Celeste thought of that morning, Theron kissing her awake, calling her beautiful, laughing, holding her hand. "No, he seems content." "Then trust that, you've given him life, real life that's worth any price." That evening, Theron found her still at the piano. New composition, about time, love, and being grateful for what we have. He kissed her softly. "You've been talking to Meredith." "I'm getting older and you're not. Doesn't that bother you?" "It reminds me our time is precious." He turned her to face him. "Every line on your face is a map of our life together. Every silver hair is a year we've shared. Your soul doesn't age, Celeste. Your spirit, your brilliant mind, generous heart, that's what I love." Tears spilled down her cheeks. "I love you too, I just wish we had more time." "We have now, we have today." He wiped her tears. "And I intend to fill it with so much love you never doubt you are cherished exactly as you are." Through their bond, she felt the truth of his words. His love burned brighter because he knew it wouldn't last forever. 30 years later. Celeste was 75, silver-haired and lined with age, but her voice was still magnificent. Today was the 50th anniversary of their bonding. She'd insisted on singing one more time. She stood before the assembly looking fragile but fierce. She began the bonding songs and the years fell away. Her voice was still pure, still powerful, carrying 50 years of love. When she finished, absolute silence. Then the entire court rose in standing ovation, honoring the human who'd loved their king so completely, she changed the court itself. Theron crossed to her, pulling her into his arms. Through their bond, he felt her exhaustion but also her joy, her complete lack of regret. That night in their chambers, Celeste spoke quietly. "I'm dying, Theron, not today but soon, I can feel it." He'd known, through their bond he'd felt her life force dimming, but hearing it shattered something inside him. "Please don't ask me to turn you," he said, voice breaking. "I could keep you but it would change you. I love who you are too much." "I wasn't going to ask. I've lived the life I wanted. It's been extraordinary. I regret I can't keep you forever." "But you will, bonds are eternal. When I die I'll still be with you through that connection." She kissed him. "Promise me you'll keep living, really living, find joy again eventually." "That's impossible." "Promise anyway, for me." He held her close, memorizing everything. "I promise, though it may take centuries." "That's okay, you have centuries," she smiled. "I love you, thank you for 50 years of magic." "I love you too, thank you for teaching me to live again." They stayed like that through the night, their bond singing with bittersweet love. 6 months later. Celeste died peacefully in Theron's arms. Her last words, "It was worth it, all of it." The palace fell silent. Theron didn't leave their chambers for 3 days. When he emerged, he was the frozen king again. But on the 4th day, he went to the conservatory. He found Celeste's book of compositions, her gift to him. He began to play. The music filled the palace, heartbreaking and beautiful. Through the notes, Celeste's voice spoke again. Her love, her life, her joy, all captured in melody. And Theron understood. This was how she'd stay, through the music, through the bond, through the changes she'd made in him. The grief would always be there, but so was the warmth she'd kindled, the capacity for love she'd reawakened. She'd made him promise to keep living, and so he would. 100 years later. The palace had transformed under King Theron's rule, a place where bonds were honoured above politics, where love was valued. The conservatory had been renamed the Celeste Ashbourne Memorial Hall, the finest music school in all realms. Every spring on the anniversary of her death, Theron stood before his court and sang. His voice carried her songs into the world, keeping her memory alive. The bond persisted. Sometimes he swore he could still feel her, warmth in the coldness, light in the darkness. She'd been right, the bond was eternal. Those 50 years with Celeste were the ones that mattered, the ones that transformed him from a monster ruling from frozen walls into a king who led with strength and compassion. She'd saved him, not from danger but from emptiness. She'd taught him to truly live. And that gift would sustain him through all the centuries, a reminder that love, even temporary love, is always worth the price. Because it's not the length of time that matters, it's the depth of the living. Celeste had helped him live more fully in 50 years than in the 300 before her. That was the real magic, the real eternal bond. Not just the spell connecting their souls, but the change she'd wrought in his heart, a change that would last forever. If Theron and Celeste's story touched your heart, you're going to love what's waiting on my Patreon. Get access to exclusive stories, character backstories, alternate endings, and join a community of fans who can't get enough of supernatural romance. Your support helps me create more magic. Link in bio.